Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started. So my name is Becky Ofran. I'm the Manager of Engagement and Partnerships for the City Health Dashboard. Thank you for stopping into our virtual office hours today. We do these monthly. They are meant to be kind of a smaller, informal way to learn about the dashboard, the data that we have, how you can use it in your city or organization. And today we're doing a special deep dive on our new broadband connection measure. And I'm joined by our senior data analyst, Euro Lee, who will cover that portion. And our senior project coordinator, Sammy Breslin, will hop in at the end as well. So again, if you want to just put into the chat what organization you're from or what city, just so we have a sense of who's joining us today. And normally with a small group, we are happy to answer questions as we go. Because we're trying a different format today, you'll have to use the chat or Q&A box. Either one should get through to us, but know that we are testing out this new format. So, but please do ask questions. This is meant to make sure that we address any issues that you have in using the data or the dashboard. So we'll dive in here. So if you're not familiar with the City Health Dashboard, our ultimate goal is to help cities across the US leverage the power of data to improve health and well-being of everyone in their community. And we really started as a pilot for 4 cities, but to address the issue of really needing local data for city policymakers to make decisions on health and well-being. A lot of data is only available at the state or county level, and we really changed that for over 750 cities across the country. So we provide over 35 measures of health, the factors that shape health, and the drivers of health equity to guide these local solutions at the city level. And the idea is that we did this with partners. We developed the pilot and the full dashboard with city leaders and with partners at the National Resource Network, ICMA, and National League of Cities, so that we had input from city managers, mayors, health departments, and users to really understand what they needed in terms of local data to make these decisions. And you can use the dashboard for many different issues, but particularly in comparing health gaps across neighborhoods. You can see here on the right a map of a portion of Columbus, Ohio, showing life expectancy across 3 census tracts or neighborhoods right next to each other. And in that 1 or 2 mile trip across those neighborhoods, you can see how the life expectancy ranges from 60 years to 80 to 68. And so really kind of highlighting these disparities across neighborhoods within individual cities can be really valuable. But you can also use the dashboard to compare to other cities in your region or with a similar population to understand how you're doing on certain measures compared to those peer cities, as well as setting priorities and better targeting local resources. For our set of, I think right now it's 39 measures, but we're always thinking about new measures. We pull from national data sets so that the measures can be comparable across all 750 cities. So we're not measuring cardiovascular disease deaths, one way in the cities in Ohio compared to a different way in the cities in California. All the measures are meant to be comparable across cities. And we put a lot of research into the methods underlying the original data sources so that we know exactly what's being put on the site, and you can get all the metric info and background as well. And we've also selected measures that we want to really reflect public health priorities and, importantly, be amenable to city level intervention. We don't want to put up a measure that a city leader can do absolutely nothing about, although life expectancy is a tricky one, but wherever change can be made, we wanted to really highlight those issues. We do update the data regularly, and the measures are balanced across 5 overarching domains shown here. We have a number of health outcomes, clinical care measures, the physical and built environment, some health behaviors, and the social and economic factors. And you can see the measures listed in navy blue are available only at the city level, and the ones in yellow are available at city and neighborhood level, or census tract is what we call neighborhoods. So there's a lot available, and really seeing it in one view is what is valuable here, so that you're seeing, you know, the health data right in line with poverty and high school graduation and measures like that. So I think here is where I'm going to pass it along to Euro. So let me stop sharing, and she's going to dive into our broadband.
Hi everyone, and thank you, Becky. So I will take here to introduce our newest metric, which is the broadband connection. So our broadband connection is defined as the household with the connections to high-speed broadband internet, that including the cable, the fiber optic, and the DSL. And that also exclude household with cellular plan only. I will explain why we made that decision later. So our data source is from the American Community Survey, and we have data from 2017 to 2019. So our data can be interpreted as like percentage of the household had connections to high-speed internet. So for example, with the city El Paso here, so 61.4% of the El Paso's household had connections to high-speed broadband internet, compared to the average of 72.4 across the dashboard cities. So why broadband connection is so important? The importance of broadband connection had been increased, especially after the COVID pandemic. So during the COVID, we spent a lot of time at home. So access to telehealth, like remote monitoring devices, video visits, like if you have a pacemaker in your heart and your doctor need to monitor that in their office. So that's sort of an example of how the broadband may influence the accessibility of the telehealth. It also will influence the economic stabilities, whether you can have you have the ability to remote working, and whether you can access the internet for job searching. And also with everybody is staying home, the video conference schooling have been important, and whether you get the reliable and timely information, especially like especially during the COVID pandemic, where there's a lot of false information. But ironically, the broadband brought both reliable and unreliable information to us. In addition to the above, online food delivery, exercise resources, they're all essential with the broadband connection. So broadband connection is basically the new social determinants of health in our generation. There are several factors that will affect the broadband connection. So firstly is the physical broadband infrastructure. That will especially important for like fiber optic connections, DSL and cable modem. So satellite is less important, have less requirement for the overall infrastructure. But the fiber is the fastest broadband available to us, and the satellite is also the slowest. And the quality of the connection, whether you have the money to subscribe for the broadband connection, whether you know the importance of broadband and how to work with broadband, that will be the digital literacy. Whether you have the consistent shelter to maintain internet access. So that is kind of reason why we only include the broadband connection with subscription and excluding the cell phone internet, is because the cell phone internet will require less of the shelter to maintain the internet access, and also require less of the like function internet device and types. So we really want to focus on the broadband with the faster end. So we have done some preliminary descriptive analysis on our broadband metric. across the dashboard cities. So this is from 2017 to 2018. Across our dashboard cities, you can see a steady increase in broadband connection from 70.9% in 2017 to 72.9% in 2019. And by the geographic disparities, you can see that among the 4 census regions, the West Coast have the highest broadband connection. That will make sense because the West Coast are having a lot of the tech companies. And so like Washington, California, even Utah and Colorado. And the Northeast have the lowest broadband connection. We thought it was interesting because before we have done this analysis, we thought the South will have the lowest broadband connection across all the census regions. But it turns out like those places with a higher broadband connection like Texas, Florida, Maryland, even Virginia and DC are all being classified as South, while the Northeast have a lot of in small industrial legacy cities, especially in Pennsylvania and Connecticut. And that's probably one of the reasons why we see the lower broadband connections in Northeast cities compared to the other portion of the cities. And you can also see that this disparity is pretty huge. The Northeast, the broadband connection on average in Northeast is 68%, while on the West Coast is 76%. So ours internally, we have classified cities into different city types. We have this analysis on our website. Is called the is with our website address and the city type. So the city type, we classify small cities into 10 different categories. And we also, here we also have the NJHI, the New Jersey smaller cities program cities, and also the big cities, that cities have population greater than 15,000 people. So you can see that the cities with the highest broadband connection is the emerging cities. They are mostly cities from like Washington, or in Texas, like around the Austin area, or in like Minnesota, those cities that are newer and also more likely to develop because of the tech industry. So that makes sense that those cities have the highest broadband internet connection. While the small industrial legacy cities are mostly like in the Northeast and Michigan area. So like the Camden, New Jersey, Flint, Michigan, and they're all small. Youngstown, Ohio, they're all small industrial legacy cities that also you can see have the smaller, lowest broadband access. And among the big cities, at this red dot is actually Detroit. So that also makes sense. The concept with the small industrial legacy cities all have the lower broadband access. And so this is our internal ranking for the city dashboard cities with highest and lowest broadband access. And you can see with the highest broadband access, they are like Sammamish, Washington, and more cities in California, Washington, and Florida. And while those cities also with the lowest broadband access, like Brownsville, Texas, like Camden, New Jersey, Detroit is here. And interestingly, like California also have 2 cities with the lowest broadband internet connection. The cities are born on the mountain side, while the cities with the highest broadband connection were more on the ocean side. Within our dashboard, we also did some assessment on within city disparities. So here, like St. Petersburg, Florida, as an example. So 74.5% of the St. Pete's household had connection to high-speed internet. which is higher than our dashboard average. But you can see this within city, even only 2 miles apart, there are high neighborhood with high internet connection rate, which is 83%. And then there's 33% only like 2 miles from here. And with our City Health dashboard, we also have this zip code and census tract crosswalk. So you can also type in your zip code and to find out which census tract that your zip code belongs to. And then you can find out the broadband connection using this feature. And here we have the El Paso, Texas, which in general have lower broadband connection than our City Health dashboard average. But even within the city, there's places with much higher internet connection than those neighborhoods with much lower internet connections. So using that within city disparities, we took the average of those within city variation, and we rank the average by state and see on average which state have the average with smallest within city range, which means that on average, the cities in that state have less disparities within the city. So New Jersey, and those states are not necessarily have the highest in broadband connections. That maybe just all the cities, all the census tract in these states are doing poorly. So in some way, it's more equally distributed than have these huge disparities. So our top 3 with the smaller disparities within cities are New Jersey, Utah, and Massachusetts. And the state with the more disparities based on our dashboard analysis or Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Louisiana. So now I'm passing my portion to Sammy, and she will discuss how to take actions and what kind of resources are available for us to improve the broadband connections.
Thank you, Euro, and apologies in advance. There's some construction going on outside my window, so if you hear any background noise, apologies. But so the dashboard, and Becky will go into this when she goes over her demo of the dashboard website just in a couple minutes, but the dashboard provides a whole range of resources and tools and strategies to help users move from data to action and kind of take that next step in their community to move the needle on these issues. And broadband connection is no different. I've highlighted a couple resources that we provide to help cities kind of become broadband ready in their community. But as we were doing the research for this metric, when we added it in June, we realized, and maybe this is, kind of obvious to a lot of us, is that the issue of broadband access, while, these issues have been kind of have been occurring for many, many years now, they've really been highlighted and somewhat exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. And this issue wasn't necessarily or totally on the radar for a lot of cities until people started going remote and schools and offices started going remote, where people didn't have access to the tools they needed to be successful at school, at home, at work. And so now, especially with the ARPA, improving broadband infrastructure is really on the forefront and has really become a new priority for cities and the federal government. And so I've also highlighted at the left of this slide, just some pilot programs that are occurring around the country or in cities around the country that local governments are kind of thinking about and taking action on to start, chipping away at these challenges. So in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and San Antonio, Texas, both of those cities are now kind of activating and using pre-existing fiber optic cables that were laid across the city, back in 2010 and earlier than the pandemic. And then they're activating those cables and that infrastructure particularly in low-income communities and in communities that have a higher concentration of schools to help families, to help communities that don't necessarily have those resources kind of log on and access broadband connections and internet access at a lower rate than what they would probably get from private providers like your Verizons or your AT&Ts. But laying fiber optic cables or, using existing fiber optic cables is a pretty expensive undertaking. So in Pittsburgh, they are actually partnering with the local university, Carnegie Mellon, to create wireless infrastructure by kind of putting, again, I am not an analyst or a technical person, but they are enabling Wi-Fi to be kind of zoomed out from high points or high buildings in Pittsburgh that are in, again, low-income communities and communities with schools, so those families are able to access free wireless internet as opposed to the fiber optic cables. And finally, in Chicago, Chicago Public Schools, with support from the local government, has entered into a partnership with the local internet or cable providers using both private funding, but also funding from the CARES Act. They've used $27 million from the CARES Act to lower the rates of internet access or of internet in low-income communities. Again, trying to improve that access and increase access in vulnerable communities that really need that support. And then I don't have it listed here, but another interesting and innovative initiative that's happening is occurring in St. Petersburg, Florida, which Euro highlighted earlier. And that there's a public-private partnership in that city that is thinking about including internet access in rent for folks that live in affordable housing units that are run by the city. So when you pay rent every month, that a portion of that payment includes your internet as well. So there's a lot of interesting, innovative new strategies and new initiatives, policies that are occurring. Some of these are more, short term, whereas in Chicago, for example, that initiative is a 4-year initiative. So the Take Action section, as Becky will go over in just a few moments, is a part of our site that is living and breathing, and we're always updating it with new resources. And so be sure to check back there, and we will include some of these pilot programs that are happening around the country, specific to broadband, in the coming months and years as well. And so Becky, with that, I will pass it back over to you for the website demo.
Okay. Okay, great. Hopefully you can see the screen here.
Becky, sorry, we can only see your desktop, not the slide, or not the your internet.
Okay, hang on 1 second. Let's try that again. Sorry, I'm looking back and forth here. Okay, how about now?
Yep, we can see the website.
Okay, great. So now that you've gotten a little bit of sense of what's in the dashboard, what does it actually look like? So very quickly, I'll just walk you through a couple of the features here. You just need any internet broadband connection to get to the dashboard at cityhealthdashboard.com. And there's a lot of things that you can explore, different resources and metric background, but you can also just jump into a city. So I kind of always default to Jersey City. That's where I live. And you can pick a measure or just start at the city overview, the link there at the bottom. And this gives you a quick glance at how the city that you've selected kind of falls on each of the measures. So the scale bar should look kind of familiar from the graphics that Euro showed, but For example, here on obesity, the gold bar represents where Jersey City falls amongst all dashboard cities, and the dashboard city average is here. And the green check mark here is showing us that Jersey City has a lower rate of obesity or a better health outcome than other cities on the dashboard. So this just gives you a quick kind of at a glance of how the city falls on all of the measures. And you can just click through to select the one that you want to look at, and it gives you that scale bar again for broadband connection here, and you can click through to get to that metric detail. So this bar at the top kind of walks you through different sections of the site, and I'll show you some of those here today. So again, we see here that Jersey City has a broadband connection rate citywide of 73.7% of households connected to broadband compared to the average across dashboard cities, which is just a little bit lower of 72.4. And then as you scroll down is where we get to the city map, where you can start to see some of those neighborhood differences. So across the site, lighter colors indicate better outcomes. And because of different measures, the higher value might be the better or worse outcome. So you can just know that the lighter colors indicates better outcomes, and the darker shades of blue indicate poorer outcomes. So we can see here some neighborhoods along the waterfront, and it's just considered downtown Jersey City, have quite high rates of broadband connection. And as you get into some of these neighborhoods down in the southern portion of the city and the Northwest, I happen to know that this is kind of an industrial area. So some of that local knowledge is important also to understand what's going on in terms of differences across the city. But as you select some of these neighborhoods, you can see how the values change and kind of zero in on what's going on there, who's living there that is not having access that people in other parts of the city are having. You can also download the scale bar, which is this portion, or the full map. That's a new feature that we added recently that can help you kind of put that information into documents or presentations that you're doing. Some of our metrics, we do have demographic detail, not for broadband connection, but I will change quickly here to take a look at children in poverty, just for example. This one, we do have demographic detail. So this breaks it down by children in poverty citywide by race and ethnicity. And so you can see just, what groups are really carrying that burden of poverty. And here we see that Black and Hispanic rates are the highest, followed by white and then Asian residents. We can also compare cities. So I will change back to broadband here and move forward into the compare cities section of the site. And here, if you, Jersey City happens to get compared to Newark a lot, it's right next door. So we can select Newark and it puts the whatever measure that we're looking at, in broadband in this case, lists that measure here. And we can see that Jersey City's value is quite a bit higher than Newark's broadband connection. But an often missed feature here is filtering for different cities. So if you're not sure, we always get compared to Newark, but there's really, different aspects of the city there. I want to look at maybe cities outside of my state. So maybe I want to pick cities in a similar population band, maybe with a similar size Hispanic population. And then we get 11 cities here that perhaps we've never thought to compare ourselves to if we want to see how we're doing better or worse than them. And you can select those and then they show up in the list down below. So the city was doing, much better on a particular issue. We could explore what's going on there and what policies they might have in place that are making a difference there. And then compare metrics, just quickly to show here, you can select, let's see, you can select another metric. So here again, we're looking at broadband connections still in the shades of blue with the blue census tracts. And we've overlaid children in poverty with the pink and red dots. And again, lighter colors of either of these indicates better outcomes. And in this way, you can start to see that some of the census tracts with better broadband connection rates, so these lighter ones here in the downtown and waterfront area, also happen to have the lighter shades of pink, which means better, lower rates of children in poverty. So less children in poverty there as well. And it's just meant to give you kind of an at a glance view of how two measures might be moving together or not, and what you can explore there. And as you scroll down, we also show it as a scatter plot. Each of these dots is a census tract, so you can click on it and see, explore what's going on with different outliers and what's happening in those neighborhoods. And then lastly, I'll just point out here the take action section that Sammy already kind of showed, but this is where you can explore different policies and programs. So because we're already looking at broadband connection, it is filtering the policies and programs for evidence-backed strategies that are really working in other places. And we curate these from trusted sources that are always updating and making sure that we have the latest resources available here. And then lastly, there's a lot of great information here in the menu. You can access all of the City Health Dashboard data and download it to your own computer to analyze in different ways or combine with other local data. You can also access it by an API, and that's all available here at this Access Dashboard Data. There's a short survey that you have to fill out, and then it just takes you right to the data. We also have some new research and reports, some COVID-19 resources for city leaders. We have some new impact stories really showing how cities and organizations across the country are using the City Health Dashboard, and a lot more ways to engage with us over here in the menu. So I think we'll pause there, and happy to take any questions on broadband, on using the dashboard in general. Maybe you've started exploring your city and have some questions around the data. We're happy to stop here for questions. And again, you can use the chat box or the Q&A. If no questions, we're happy to give people time back in their afternoon or morning, but we'll pause another minute or so in case people are still thinking and exploring the site. I'm just noting for the chat, the Q&A box is new to me and I don't see anything coming through there, but for the chat, make sure if you do put something in that it's going to all panelists and attendees. Okay, I think we did a great job explaining and showing the site and the new broadband measure. Thanks again for joining us. We do record these and post them onto the Virtual Office Hours website. I'll try and quickly pull up our events page, you can always find when our future office hours are, or other presentations and conferences that we're going to be at. So I just put that in the chat. Feel free to come to future virtual office hours. If you do find yourself using the data in useful ways, please let us know. We love hearing from users. And I will just put our email into the chat as well. And thank you again for joining us. And we'll see you on the site.